Shove it, man!
Alright, it's the leader of the squad who makes the girls nod. Have you ever heard about the tallest woman in the WWE? A woman that would dwarf almost every single talent on the roster today. This is a woman best known by the name Isis the Amazon. Over the years, WWE has had many men of all shapes and sizes, but surprisingly, we have never had a giant women's wrestler.
You guys ready for this? Have you seen this girl?
Man.
This woman is huge.
I've heard she would manhandle.
I seen her eat a rack of ribs before she even got here.
No, not her. That was unfortunate timing. This is her. Things seemed like they would be pretty easy for the Amazon as she was gifted with the sort of size that just couldn't be ignored. The Amazon didn't grow up as a wrestling fan and hardly watched it as a kid. She was instead forced into basketball, but she rebelled as she doesn't like being told what to do. She wrestled on the indie circuit for about 1 year before she was slated in to take part in the all-female version of NXT in 2010. Think about it, how could the WWE possibly pass up on a young lady who stood at a Colossus 6'9"? If this lady had stood next to The Undertaker in 2010, she'd probably be taller than he was. Isn't that completely mad when you think about it? A woman bigger than the Taker. But that wasn't all. She weighed in at 240 pounds, also heavier than the majority of the modern day roster. She's given the name Aloisa, and she would get a hype segment on NXT where her pro would be Vicky Guerrero. It did feel like the WWE were about to strap a rocket to her ass. But on the next episode of NXT, Vicky Guerrero announced that she had fired Aloisa and replaced her with Caitlyn. The reason given was that Vicky wanted to teach her who the bigger person was. This would actually be seen as a low-key shot at her bad backstage attitude where she robbed people the wrong way. What a miss by the WWE. This would have been the first ever woman who actually could have hung with the men as she was taller than them. This would have been something that legends were made of. One of the largely accepted reasons for her being kicked off NXT was that she was just too far away green in the ring. It makes you question, just how bad was she? Because the likes of Caitlyn, Oksana, Jamie and Maxine were all on the show too. But ultimately, there would be a bigger reason for WWE giving her the boot. WWE had recently turned PG, and due to that, they were overly sensitive about things and didn't want to upset the little kiddies. So they had all their new talents fill out information forms about themselves. There was one question on the form which asked if they had ever posed nude. Now this giant woman had never posed nude, so she answered no on the form. But Aloisa had had a troubled childhood. She was already 6 foot tall at the age of 9, making life difficult for her. But that was the least of it. She had been abused by her stepfather and she left home at the age of 18. Desperate for some cash to live, she agreed to pose in some suggestive photos which weren't actually nudes, but they were risque. In the PG world of WWE, this was completely unacceptable. She said that she would have answered yes if the question had been, had she ever posed suggestively? So her shot at the big time was taken away under somewhat controversial circumstances, before she'd even wrestled a single match for the company. While she can claim to be the tallest woman on WWE telly, she didn't actually wrestle a match, so the winner of that award still goes to Mad Maxine, who wrestled for the company back in the All-American Wrestling days of the 80s. Maxine stood at 6'4", and she still holds the record for the tallest woman to wrestle in the WWE. And if you're wondering why she didn't last in the company, it was due to the fabulous Mueller taking too much of her money away and making her hate being in the company. Nicole Bass would be the second biggest, if you could even call what she did wrestling. So it was off to the Indies for Aloisa, where she went back to wrestling under the name Isis the Amazon. And it was here that it became a little bit more clear why WWE didn't really miss out on her that hard. A few months later, and in TNA land, a storyline was running where a wild slapnuts and his bitch wife appeared.
Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
They'd been feuding with Prime Angle. Yeah, Prime Angle, you heard that right. Angle doesn't like to be reminded of those days, so the Perk Angle name has been retired in respect of the legend which is the master of the Prime Drop and the Prime Soul. If Kurt doesn't like it, I don't like it, and that's the highest sign of respect the Hawk can show somebody, because I'm a prick and I'll hit you with a brick. So Kurt's feuding with the most disgusting, greasy bitch whore of all time, Jeff Jarrett, and his ex-wife Karen. Karen keeps accusing Kurt of having a mystery mistress, some woman that Karen is scared of. Kurt goes along with it, and this gets a fair bit of hype for a few weeks. Now at the time, it was heavily rumoured on message boards that this spot was going to go to the debuting Isis the Amazon. And if you look at it, the times do match up, because around this time, Isis the Amazon wrestled a dark match in TNA against Leva Bates. The match was deemed such a diarrhea fest that TNA couldn't even air it. Isis won with a chokeslam in a terrible match. This means that TNA can actually claim that they had the largest woman in wrestling history wrestle for them on their show. Come on WWE, you love winning at everything, you can't possibly let TNA hold that title. TNA do have the footage of the match somewhere in their archives because it used to exist online but it was taken down through copyright, and I recommend that TNA release it, even if it is bad. People love to view that sort of stuff and nobody cares if it makes you look bad, as it was just a tryout match from 2011. It was not just her poor wrestling ability though. She was apparently a complete pain in the ass backstage, and some of the knockouts like Angelina Love refused to work with the Giant if she was to be signed. Apparently, she thought she was a massive star, and reportedly no one had ever met a wrestler with such a bad backstage attitude. The backlash from all of this was so severe that TNA changed their plans for a mixed tag at the pay-per-view and had Kurt Angle's partner be a debuting Chyna instead. The fallout from all of this must have hit Isis the Amazon hard. After not getting a TNA contract, she only wrestled on the indies one more time before retiring and ending her 3-year career. She moved along into acting, where she played some bits parts on shows such as Grey's Anatomy, but nothing too major. You have to question why a woman of her size is struggling to find work. It has to be down to her attitude. She does hold the title of the tallest female lead actress though. The biggest exposure she would get would be from a 2015 TV show called My Giant's Life, which followed around people who were very tall. On this show, she revealed she still hopes to battle at WrestleMania someday. A year later, she was training with Brian Kendrick for a comeback, which seems to have gone nowhere. She says the best advice she ever got in wrestling was from Scott Hall, who told her, never be lowballed. Well, that's the best advice you can take during a 3-year career. It's really not going to go well, is it? I've read on several sources that she was indeed very fussy over her paydays. Fussy for someone who was essentially a nobody. Pictures surfaced last year of her new look, and I have to say, I've never seen a giant crackhead before, but I have now. She had to have spinal surgery, a problem which a lot of taller wrestlers often suffer with, and she didn't even wrestle for that long. To be fair, when you're that size, it is incredibly difficult to be built in the right places like everybody else. She mentions on her website that she only ever saw wrestling as a stepping stone into acting. Probably a good thing, because let's be honest, despite her height, she looked like a McMuffin on stilts and looked completely lost in the ring. The most frequent comparison she gets is to Giant Gonzalez. High levels of praise right there then. It's all well and good having the size, but I'm not sure she had a single other redeeming quality. She's still in her 30s, so maybe she has time for one more comeback at the granddaddy of them all. Or maybe not. I hope you all enjoyed this blast from my ass, and if you don't agree with that, you shall not pass.